Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 9 of the Giro d'Italia 2024, brought to you by Bicycle, the largest global marketplace for pre-owned bikes. With over 20,000 high-quality pre-owned and refurbished bikes available, Bicycle connects the buyers and sellers to make the process of buying and selling bikes safe, easy, and convenient. Remember, if you're selling a bike, to use the code ButterflyEffect24. Now let's get into the stage here, because at 215 kilometers, about 135 miles in length, you just don't know what to expect when you went to bed last night, because it's downhill, it's flat all the way into the last 40 kilometers, but it looks hilly in the last 40 kilometers. From 40 kilometers to go, there's a KOM. Then with about 30 kilometers to go, there's another climb. 20 kilometers to go, there's another one. Then 10 kilometers to go, there's the last and final obstacle here for the sprinters if they want a shot at winning today's stage 9 of the Giro d'Italia. But that last climb is going to summit with about 6 kilometers to go. Then a crazy descent, bumpy, rough roads, because we're racing here in Naples, Italy, where you know the road's got some patchwork and there's definitely obstacles that you got to avoid and keep an eye out for when you're coming into the finish of today's stage. That'll come through the last turn with about 800 meters to go, then straight, still slightly downhill into about 500 meters to go, flatten out a tad, and then if the sprinters want to win today's race, they got to be good and they got to be on their A game here for stage 9 of the Giro d'Italia, because it's a difficult last 40 kilometers of the race. Now, when the cameras come on, we see two riders that are breaking away right away to begin with. That's Cometa up there, that's Maestri, and then that's Pietrobone. And Pietrobone was in one of the breakaways on stage 5 that went all the way to the distance. But today, guess what? The peloton is riding easy back there with only one Jimmy Johnson on the front from Alpecin Deceuninck. Alpecin Deceuninck are trying to give Caden Groves a shot at winning here at the finish of today's race, because they know he's a bit of a climber. We start looking at the other sprinters, though, that are capable of getting over this last 40 kilometers and 4 climbs on today's stage 9. Well, you know Caleb Ewan can climb, because we've seen him go second at Milan-San Remo. Johnny Milan, he can climb. We've seen him in the classics doing magnificent work when we're talking about Mads Pedersen and setting him up for a Gent-Wevelgem win. So we know Johnny Milan's got a good shot at getting over today's stage 9. Then when we start looking at other sprinters back there, can Coy get over a climb like this with 4 climbs in the last 40 kilometers? Most likely he can. But other riders, when we're talking about Fabio Jakobsen, he hasn't climbed good on any of the sprinter stages yet, especially when they've had 1.5 kilometer climbs near the finish of the stages. Today's got 4 climbs, and they're over 1.5. So doesn't look like it's a great stage for Fabio Jakobsen and a few other sprinters like Tim Miller. So when you went to bed last night, anything could happen on the race. And I got to believe with Geraint Thomas's interview where he says it's 50-50. It's 215 kilometer stage. So a sprinter team has to be willing to ride the whole day. But when you look up there and you only see 2 guys from the same team of Cometa up there, and they're taking all the sprint competition points, and they're only holding about a 2-minute, 3-minute gap maximum, and it's only Jimmy Johnson back there working. There's good reasons why we know it's going to be a field sprint early in today's stage 9 with only those 2 guys out front, and they're not pedaling hard, and the peloton behind's not going hard. So I'm going to fast forward everything up to just about under 50 kilometers to go, where we see Geraint Thomas go down in a crash, and he's got Max Schachmann with him as they went through the roundabout. Now, Geraint Thomas looked like he got out of this pretty much unscathed with just his chain coming off, but when we look at Max Schachmann, it looks like he's got an elbow problem with his arm. He will get back on his bike and finish today's stage, but the action starts really heating up now with the peloton going curb to curb after Geraint Thomas got back on after the Inter-Giro sprint. Now, Johnny Milan, he didn't do the last sprint of today's stage 9 in the Inter-Giro sprint competitions and the sprints before that, but he was really active in a few of the earlier ones. But now coming into the end, if you listen to Johnny Milan's interview, he said he wanted to be really safe and save some energy, so he wouldn't do the last sprint in the mid-stage sprints here on stage 9. That's why we didn't see him up on the last time until we start getting into about 40 kilometers to go, where we come up into the first climbing and most difficult part of today's stage 9. Now we see the 2 breakaway riders as they're coming into the first climb here on stage 9. They got up just over a minute gap, but the peloton's been nervous and curb to curb after the Inter-Giro sprint. So right now we see UAE Team Emirates on one side, we see Ineos on the other as the climb starts proper. Then we're going to see Alpecin Deceuninck take over the front again once they get things in order. We go back up to the two riders in front. They're going over the top of the KOM. Nobody's worried about KOM points here. But when we look at the peloton behind, Alpecin de Koenig's all over the front, dropping down the descent. The two riders are holding a small gap when they come into the third climb here. Once the third climb starts proper, Julian Alaphilippe, the Frenchman from Pseudo Quickstep, goes on the attack. Now, to my disbelief, when I'm sitting on the couch, I see Nicolas Conti there, Alpecin de Koenig, follow the attack of Julian Alaphilippe. So let me back you up to one of the interviews from Quentin Herman's Alpecin de Koenig at the beginning of the stage. Well, Quentin Herman said that this was a great stage for Caden Groves to win the sprint, but it also was a stage that opened up the possibilities for Quentin Hermans to be able to follow some attacks, because if he's following an attack like we're watching right now with Julian Alaphilippe and with Conti up there, that means that Quentin Hermans would be able to say, hey, I got my sprinter back there. But I don't like this tactic right now from Conti, because when I'm sitting on the Chesterfield, I'm like, I know who Conti is, but I don't know what Conti's want. Has Conti won anything? So I had to look him up, and I asked my boy Garrett, I said, what has Conti done? Am I knucklehead right here for thinking that he shouldn't be leaving and breaking the #1 rule on the butterfly effect, leaving your sprinter, the #1 guy on your team, to have a shot here at winning today's stage 9? Well, Garrett tells me no, he hasn't won anything in the World Tour races. And I'm like, okay, I'm not the knucklehead, Conti is. Well, Conti's following Julian Alaphilippe's attack. Then we see a couple more attacks coming from the back. We see it's FDJ, Louis Askey, and Kevin Vermark from DSM, the American rider. Kevin Vermark is throwing down some power on the pedals. Julian Alaphilippe and Conti have caught the two Polti Cometa riders up there to make 4. But as they go over the top of the climb, once they start to descent, we see Kevin Vermark flying by to take the lead here at the front to make 6 riders in the front, with Kevin Vermark going full on down the descent. Then with 25 kilometers to go, thereabouts, we'll see the next attack coming out of the peloton. That's Arkea Samsic back there, Ewan Costou. Costou's been riding great ever since Paris-Nice, when he went over the top of one of the climbs on stage 1 near at the finish, and he was following the best riders in the world like Remco Evenepoel and Primoz Roglic. I told you guys you had to keep an eye out for him. Remember when he stuck his tongue out there on Paris-Nice stage, and you know he was excited there? Well, now he's excited because he's at the Giro d'Italia, and he's bridged the gap up to the 6 leaders to put 7 riders up in the front of the group. Now we look behind. It's Leadout Trek back there pulling. They got 7 guys on the front, but I can't see Juan Pedro Lopez. Did see him at the back of the field when the climb started proper, but they got 7 guys pulling, and they're climbers, not even one of them at the front pulling that I recognize. Now we see 7 guys pulling there, going into damage control mode to try to bring in the stage victory win here for Johnny Milan. But up front, it's still chaos. Nobody's working well because Conchi's up there just disrupting the flow. And the Frenchman, Julian Alaphilippe's just had it, so he throws in another attack on the 3rd category climb here as he starts going up this climb with another big attack. Ewan Costou, who caught the group, like I said, now he's flown around and he's gotten up on the back wheel there of Julian Alaphilippe, flies past Julian Alaphilippe. Now we got a 2-rider break. As we see the chasers behind, we see Conti on the front, but this isn't going to help. At this moment, Conti just sit up, go back to the peloton and start pulling. Well, he blows eventually, gets caught from the peloton. Now we see Alpecin de Koenig pulling on the front with Leadout Trek, as we see that Kevin Vermark still stuck in the middle with 1 guy with him, and then we got the 2 leaders up front with Julian Alaphilippe, the Frenchman, going like crazy, and Ewan from Arkea Samsic pulling as hard as he can with Julian Alaphilippe. They come into the last and final 4th category climb here as we start coming into this. Once we see that the peloton's done a fantastic job of holding the 2 leaders close, this is when Ewan from Arkea Samsic sits up, but Julian Alaphilippe, the Frenchman, he's still going deep. As he's going deep, we're coming into just under 8 kilometers to go. Jonathan Narvaez there from Ineos, he throws in an attack, starts blowing up the peloton back there as he's starting to go solo straight past Julian Alaphilippe as the Frenchman blows, and then goes straight out the back of the peloton. Now we look at the chasers back there. What's happened? Caden Groves trying to follow some of the attacks that are still trying to follow the move and catch up to Narvaez. Now as Narvaez crests the top of the last and final obstacle here on stage 9, at least the final hill obstacle, there's a ton more obstacles because you got a quality field back there hot on his heels at about 5 seconds when he went over the summit. Now he starts down the descent, but the peloton still hasn't gotten organized because they're still trying to wrap up everyone that was attacking. And we see Visma Lisa bike on the back of the peloton there as you see the leader, Narvaez, there dropping down the descent with under 5 kilometers to go. We go back to the peloton. There's a crash on this descent, and we'll see that that's Marcelucci there going down from Bardiani, but nothing stopping at the front of the peloton as they got to go full gas because the gap up there to Narvaez is getting up to about 10 seconds. Now, Tadej Pogačar, he's coming into fine position. He's always been at the front of the peloton, going up over all these climbs. And as we're coming down the descent, Tadej Pogačar still at the front with 1.5 kilometers to go, but he's too close to the front. He's sitting about third position there as we're coming into about 1.5 kilometers to go. And then you're going to see Leadout, Simone Consoni, and Johnny Milan come around Tadej Pogačar and give him a little bump. That's because sprinter teams do not like having someone that they can't trust on the front. So Leadout's pulling like crazy. Tadej Pogačar is getting a little sprinter love there as he's getting bumped around. Caleb Ewan's sitting right behind Johnny Milan there as we see the duo coming up there of Visma bike with 1.1 kilometer to go. We see that's Tim van Dijk and Olaf Koy. Tim van Dijk's trying to come up there and pass Caleb Ewan, but Caleb Ewan knows he's in a prime position here right behind Johnny Milan, and the turn followed by the technical U-turns coming up. So Caleb Ewan swings outside and holds up Tim van Dijk and then swings right back on the Johnny Milan's wheel as they go into the left, followed by the crazy U-turn here with just under a K to go. Well, Caleb Ewan did a fantastic job to hold position, but let's look at the front to find out who's doing a better job. That's Narvaez as he's pulling out of the last U-turn here. He's throwing down on the pedals with 900 meters to go, coming out of the last and final right. Then he's going into the 800 meters, last final turn here on stage 9. And as he's going into 800 meters to go, look at 900 meters to go, so the peloton's coming out of that right. I'm sitting on the Chesterfield. I'm like, Narvaez, you got this stage 1 unless something magical happens back there in the peloton. Well, we go into 800 meters to go. Now let's look at the peloton. Let's take a look. That's Ed Toons on the front. Simone Consoni, Johnny Milan's there. We see sitting behind Johnny Milan in perfect position. Caleb Ewan's there. Tadej Pogačar's just behind that. We see Milano's a little bit further back by Olaf Koy back there. And the American rider there, Luke Lamperti there, he's in a fine position just in front of Milano, sitting fantastic with a shot here of winning stage 9 if Narvaez doesn't get caught. But like I said, I think Narvaez is going to win today's stage 9. But as they come out of this 800-meter turn, we'll see this Leadout Trek. That's Ed Toons on the front, like I already said. Now Tadej Pogačar is going to the front at 600 meters to go. And I'm starting to change my mind because Narvaez is starting to blow as the descent has finally stopped and is starting to flatten out. Tadej Pogačar is on the front. Now let's look behind there as we see Olaf Koy has come up and he's bumping off Caleb Ewan there, who's getting squeezed by Ed Toons as Ed Toons is falling off the front of the peloton there on the left side. Caleb Ewan's getting squeezed there by Olaf Koy as Olaf Koy is trying to take Milano's wheel. Now Tadej Pogačar is flying on the front of the peloton as we look back at the film and we see Simone Consoni slotted into second place. Rui Oliveira slotted on to third place. And then once we look back at the front of the peloton, we see Rui Oliveira with about 400 meters to go. He looks back and realizes this is not the good place for him to be. So he pulls off hard right as Tadej Pogačar is still throwing down the pedals. And Narvaez's time is dropping like a rock right now with just 350 meters to go. Now the view of the peloton goes back up to the helicopter angle as Luke Lamperti. He's going to bump there with Milano and hold up Milano, but Tadej Pogačar is still flying up to about 325 meters to go. Then we see Simone Consoni take over at the front. He starts the sprint. He's got Johnny Milan's on his wheel and Olaf Koy's on Johnny's wheel that I told you he did a fantastic job of taking Caleb Ewan off the wheel. So now he's sitting third position. Simone Consoni's flying. He's bringing up to the back wheel there real close, not quite to the back wheel of Narvaez, and then with about 150 meters to go, Johnny Milan throws in a huge acceleration coming around the outside as the road is bending to the left. Johnny Milan's coming around the right, and then we see Olaf Koy's coming along with Johnny Milan. Now as Johnny Milan passes Simone Consoni, he's coming up to the back wheel, 50 meters to go on Narvaez there from Ineos, who looked like he had a shot for sure of winning today's stage with 800 meters to go. Now I'm sitting on Chesterfield like he's got no shot because Johnny Milan's coming like a freight train, and just behind him is Olaf Koy from Visma bike. As Johnny Milan passes Jonathan Narvaez there with about 40 meters to go, Johnny Milan's in the lead, but they're going 3 wide because Olaf Koy's there, and then of course Jonathan Narvaez drops out of the lead. Now we're 2 wide there with Olaf Koy and Johnny Milan. It's going to be a bike throw. Olaf Koy throws his bike first at about 5 meters, 6, 7 meters to go. Then Johnny Milan throws his bike. We got to look at the side angle though. It's clear Olaf Koy wins today stage 9. Johnny Milan gets second, keeps the race leader sprint jersey. Third on the stage is Milano, who held on for UAE team members to round out the podium here. Guys, this was a sleeper of a stage. all the way into 40 kilometers to go. But if you got 40 kilometers worth of viewing, go back and watch it, because from there all the way to the finish, Julian Alaphilippe highlighted the stage with antics all over the place that I'll try to explain tomorrow and the rest day here of the Giro d'Italia of what the Frenchman Julian Alaphilippe has been doing wrong for the last year, if not year and a half of his career so far, when we're talking about here at the Giro d'Italia and of course last year's Tour de France, because the Frenchman is just putting on too many antics here to be able to get himself a stage victory if he keeps racing this aggressive. But I'll explain in more detail on tomorrow's rest day. Now, when we're talking about Visma Lease bike, Olaf Koy thanked his teammate Tim van Dijk, who did a fantastic job. Tim van Dijk had put Olaf Koy in a good position here, and on top of that, remember, he's super young. Olaf Koy's super young. They're learning the ropes here and learning how to race and do field sprints, along with learning how to do the classics, like Tim van Dijk and his brother were fabulous at the early classics here in 2024. Now he's taking it one more step further, learning how to get Olaf Koy into a good position to be able to win a stage like we saw here on stage 9 that was really done with massive power. Tadej Pogačar, next time, if I was a Slovenian, I would have done the pull sooner with about 4 or 5 kilometers to go on the descent so that the pace would be a little bit easier for Milano back there, sprinter, because Milano needs the pace to be a little bit slower, while riders and sprinters like Johnny Milan and Olaf Koy like it to be hard and fast all the way into the line because they're pure power sprinters, where Milano has more speed but not power. So when we're talking about the Slovenian Tadej Pogačar, in the future, Tadej Pogačar, bring the brake back a little bit sooner so you can slow the speed down just a little bit for Milano. Then he'll be a little bit stronger in the finish and be a little bit more explosive and be able to keep pace with Johnny Milan and Olaf Koy. Either way, Milano did a fantastic job to round out the podium here for UAE team members. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Tomorrow's the rest day of the Giro d'Italia 2024, and I'll see you real soon.